Commanders hire Dan Quinn to match with their new general manager, Adam Peters, to lead this franchise into the future.
The way that we live is not for everybody, okay? It's not, all right? Because we're going to run and put our bodies on people in a violent manner.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commanders Nightly News. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So the Commanders complete the season sweep of the New York Football Giants with a 27-22 victory, running their record to 7-2, the best mark that this team has had to start a season since 1996. They remain atop the NFC East by a half game over the Philadelphia Eagles. NFC East division play is really going to kick off next week. You got the Steelers this week coming up. Quick turnaround. Eagles. Cowboys are a mess. Dak Prescott looks like he'll be out of that game. They're mulling over whether to put him on IR or not. We'll talk more about that tomorrow when we go around the NFC East. But this is about us. And today is another Victory Monday / Tell the Truth Monday. And we're going to do both of those things. We're going to celebrate because all of the things I just said, 7-2, best start since 96, swept the Giants. You're 2-0 in the division, still leading the division by a half game over the Eagles. All of that and then some. Another really good performance by this football team. The offense, good again. Could have been better. We'll talk about that here in a bit. Defense, not their best outing by far, but still made enough plays in the game to help this team be victorious. And so you move on with a win. You put another one in the left-hand column, and you keep it pushing. But we're going to talk about how it came to be, and there's a lot of things that I want to talk about. I touched on a number of things on the day after reaction video, so if you haven't had a chance to check that out, please do so. But there were some unsung heroes. There were some guys that stood out. And there are going to be a couple more people that I bring up in this particular show that I might have left out of the show on Sunday post-game or on the day after show. So we'll do that in a bit. But let's get to the keys to victory, as I like to do here on Mondays when we start to tell the truth. Did we do the things that lead to victory? Obviously, we won the game, but it doesn't mean that we did everything that we needed to do that I thought were keys specifically to this game to help us win. And so let's get to those keys and talk about how we fared. We start with the first offensive key, which was run it up. And that essentially meant, could be twofold, right? Run up the scoreboard. The Giants can't score. But this, in my particular interpretation, was, hey, run the football. Giants aren't a good run defense. Haven't been this season. Run the football. Run it up, right? And we did run the football. And we continue to do the things that we've done this season. Was it our most successful day on the ground? No, right? But everybody contributed. With no Brian Robinson, he was a late scratch. And I didn't think he would go. And I said already, I didn't think he needed to go this week. We could handle, this particular opponent without him, not to sound, super cocky and arrogant, but we're better than the Giants. There's no secret there. And I'm not mincing words. I feel good about this team, and I know what this team is capable of. And I knew we were capable of beating the Giants without Brian Robinson Jr. Let him rest up. We'll need him for the Steelers. Much more physical opponent. We'll need him next week and moving forward. So hopefully he'll be ready to go next week against the Pittsburgh Steelers because that's an opponent that will need his physicality with next week. But you had everybody step up from, Jeremy McNichols to Austin Eckler to Chris Rodriguez, who was one of the unsung heroes of yesterday, had an amazing block on a 3rd and 1 pass that went to Ben Sinnott, led the team in rushing yesterday, 11 carries, 52 yards. He was fantastic yesterday. When his number was called, he was ready, and he did not disappoint. And, that last drive to put the game away, to get that final first down, and the face mask and all of that stuff, him running the ball the way he did the final 2 possessions, but particularly that last possession of the game when we had to keep it away from the Giants, he was extraordinary. And so you couple that in with Jaden's yards on the ground, his 35 yards or so. It was a really good day at the office for the ground game. And so they get a check mark there for run it up. Next offensive key, protect Jaden and the Duke. That's going to be a key probably moving forward because This team only goes as Jaden Daniels goes. That's, again, not something that is new news to anyone out there. If we want to be successful, 5 has to be upright and healthy and doing the things that we know he's capable of doing. And the best way to have that happen is to him to stay upright and for them to protect him and him to protect himself. He did both, or both of those things were achieved in this game. No sacks given up against the team that led the league in sacks coming into Week 9's contest. Jaden did a good job protecting himself. He slid when he needed to. He got out of bounds. He didn't put himself in harm's way. He did get dragged down one time that I thought was a horse collar, but that's the second week in a row that they just haven't called it. But luckily enough for us, he was able to get up, continue to play, and no worse for the wear there. And then we didn't turn it over again. And I saw a jarring stat, one that was kind of like mind-blowing. The Commanders, through the first 9 weeks, have committed 3 turnovers. It is the fewest turnovers in NFL history since the stat was compiled. I think going all the way back to 1950 when they first started compiling the turnover stat, that a team has started through the first 9 weeks of the season with this few turnovers, right? 3 turnovers in 9 games. One of the superpowers of Jaden Daniels coming out of LSU, and we talked about this throughout the draft process, was he doesn't turn it over, right? And if you want to win with a rookie quarterback, you want to win with a young team, one of the fastest ways, one of the best ways you can do that is to protect the ball. And he credited a lot of that to Herm Edwards, his coach at ASU, when he told him, hey, you want to stick around in the NFL, you got to take care of the football. We saw it in his collegiate career, and we saw it last year at LSU in particular when he won the Heisman Trophy with 44 touchdown passes or 40 touchdown passes, another 10, 11, 12, 13 rushing touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions. He takes care of the football. He does not put it in harm's way. And clearly that's been the case this season as well. And, it's not just him, right? Because usually when you think of a young quarterback, you think of turnovers, right? You look at Bo Nix, you look at Caleb Williams, you look at Drake May. He threw the game-clinching interception in overtime against the Titans. He had the game, the go-ahead score for the Titans in regulation on a fumble where he was reckless with the football. Young quarterbacks generally turn the football over, not our guy, because he's one of them ones. He's different. And it's not just him, though. It's everybody else around him. The ball security has been top-notch. And we've been hustling. Every day we hustling. Every game we hustling. And when you hustle, good things happen. We had a fumble in the Bengals game that could have changed everything. Ertz fumbled. Allegretti there to recover the fumble, right? Eckler fumbled against the Browns. Guess what? OZ there to recover it, right? Last week against the Bears, OZ had a fumble. Jeremy McNichols there to recover it, right? So not only have we taken care of the ball, but when we haven't taken care of the ball, we've had each other's back. So I said all that to say this. We continue to protect the Duke and Jaden. We did a great job of it in this game. Check mark. Finish drives with touchdowns was the next offensive key. We needed to see better red zone efficiency. We got a half point for this because obviously we were perfect in the first half, 3 of 3. And then we were the direct opposite in the second half, 0 of 3. So we finished 3 of 6 in this game in the red zone. Now, obviously the final possession, we could have scored if need be, but we didn't need to. Knees were the most efficient way to end this game. And we were really 3 of 5, which still isn't good enough, right? You want to put teams like the Giants away. You needed to score touchdowns. We had opportunities. We didn't seize them. And thus this game was a lot closer than it needed to be, much like the first one. But we were better in the red zone, but not good enough. I'm striving for perfection. This isn't a low-hanging fruit. This isn't me settling. We want to be the best. We got to perform like it. And we got to be better, right? Lastly, win on third downs. I gave us a half point here as well. We were 5 of 12 on third downs. Not our best outing. That's sub 50%. Now, it's still above league average at 41%, but we're not striving for above league average. We're not the average team in this league. We expect more of this team because to whom much is given, much is expected. This offense has spoiled us and it's shown us what it's capable of. So we're not going to accept above league average. We're looking to be great. We're striving for greatness and perfection. We need to be over 50%. And we didn't hit that mark in the game. So it was solid. And you add on to that, we were 2 of 2 on fourth downs, which now the Commanders are 11 of 11 on fourth downs this season. The first time this team has started that well since that stat has been taken, and that started in 1980. So I'd love to know what is the record for the most fourth down completions to fourth down conversions, rather, to start a season without a missed conversion, right? I would love to see what that number is, but 2 more on Sunday brings the number to 11 total overall. Commanders are 11 of 11, but we could have been better on third downs. So now you go to the defensive keys to the game. And the first one was stop the run. And I brought this up on the post-game show that was the first key to the game. And boy, did we bungle that one, especially in the first half. Honestly, there really was no mention of the Giants' run game in the second half. And I told everybody in the mob, I said, we're going to stop the run better in the second half. And we did. The Giants ended the game with 165 rush yards. They had 140 in the first half, right? When you go look at Tyrone Tracy's numbers and you look at the Giants, they really didn't kill us as bad as it felt, right? But there were possessions in that first half where you go, that is unacceptable. Unacceptable for them to have that many runs, move the football that far down the field without attempting a pass. But they cleaned it up in the second half. The run was a non-factor in the second half of this game, but then the pass became a problem, which it wasn't in the first half. So it was like we couldn't put it all together. It was either one thing that we could stop, but couldn't stop the other, or vice versa, right? And we didn't stop the run well enough in the game. I honestly could give us half credit for it because we were much better in the second half, but we were so bad in the first half, I can't give any credit. Defensive key number 2. Keep the Giants out of the end zone. Unfortunately, we didn't do this well at all. We didn't complete this mission. And we knew the task at hand. We knew what needed to be done, and we didn't execute. I talked about the Giants being one of the worst home teams, not just from a record standpoint. They're now 0-5 on the season at home this year. That's not what I was referring to. You know, bad teams it doesn't matter where a bad team plays, home or away. If they're bad, they're going to lose football games. So I'm not talking about being, 0 and now 5 at home. I was talking about their inability to score points at home. There's one thing to be bad at home and lose games at home. It's another thing to not even show up on the scoreboard at home. And that's what the Giants have been this season, putrid at home. And we allowed them to score the most points that they've scored this season at home in a game. Daniel Jones had gone, some ridiculous amount of time without throwing a passing touchdown at home. And we allowed him to run over 2 defenders. He might end up on angry runs this week at our expense. We let him run over 2 guys and get into the end zone and get hype on our ass. We allowed the Giants to score 3 touchdowns in this game. A Jones rushing touchdown, a Jones passing touchdown, and then another Jones passing touchdown at the end for good measure. This is a team that averaged 7.75 points per game at home this season, okay? A touchdown is all they've averaged at home this season, and we gave up 3. One of them in just about a minute. Unacceptable. Obviously, we got no points there, and we should be ashamed of ourselves. Granted, it's family business, and I've already talked about what the Giants, are to us, and I've already talked about the struggles that we have against the Giants home, away, the struggles we've had against Daniel Jones. We know what this is. We know what this family business looks like. Still doesn't change the fact that I'm disappointed, but I'm also elated that we found a way to win. Because in this series, we found ways to lose instead of finding ways to win. Next defensive key, keep rushing and ball is life. Keep rushing referred to keep getting pressure on the quarterback. We had been really good here of late at getting to the quarterback, and we did that in this game. Could we have been better? Yeah, we could have been. We only had 2 sacks. Both of them were Dante Fowler Jr. Again, I've been talking about DFJ all season long and how he's been a godsend. I don't know how else I need to say it to get you guys to recognize what this guy has been for us. But you remember when I told you how excited I was to finally have a situational pass rusher? Now you know why, right? But that sack that he forced with the fumble on the first possession of the game, that's the second time he's, wrecked a game on the first possession, or this time the second possession, rather. The Giants went 3 and out in their first possession. The second possession, they were moving it down the field on us, matriculating the ball down the field via the run, and then they tried a screen, and DFJ blew it up and caused the fumble. And that changed the entire game, right? Because before then, neither team had scored, and we had yet to really get into a rhythm. That, started off us getting into a rhythm. The offense took that turnover, turned it into a touchdown, and we never trailed in the game, right? Who knows? We were going to trail more likely than not if we couldn't keep them out of the end zone. They settled for a field goal. They had a new kicker. I don't know if he was going to make a kick or not, but we could have trailed in the game. We never trailed in this game, and it started with DFJ's sack of Daniel Jones and that forced fumble. Also, ball is life. That one play produced the game's only turnover, but yet again, we added another number in that plus side of the category in the turnover battle. We're now +5 on the season. That number continues to rise as we continue to take care of the football. Each game, we continue to produce at least a turnover, right? It's not as much life as we were looking for, but it's still life nonetheless. And I am appreciative of every single time they are able to turn the opposition over. And that's now, 4 or 5 weeks straight, going all the way back to Cleveland, I think Cleveland was Cleveland. Yeah, Cleveland, because we didn't force a turnover against Arizona. We had a turnover on downs. I always think of that as a turnover, but we produced a turnover on downs, but that's not actually a turnover, even though I see it as such. But that next game, week 5 against Cleveland, we forced the turnover of Watson there. Week 6, we picked off Lamar Jackson. Week 7 against Carolina, we picked off Andy Dalton twice. Week 8 against the Bears, they had the fumble down in the red zone. We recovered that. And then week 9, we had the fumble forced of Daniel Jones. So that's 5 weeks in a row for this defense. And outside of the Cleveland game where we gave it away twice, we've been able to take care of it in that same stretch, right? While forcing turnovers, we're not turning it over. That's huge. So get a check mark there for keep rushing and ball is life. And then the last defensive key was communication and eliminate explosives. I didn't want to see any explosives. And although the Giants technically had, 1 or 2 explosives in this game, they really didn't have any explosives. The 2 explosives, Daniel Jones run on a read option keep, and then the Theo Johnson touchdown up the seam were their 2 big plays in the game, really. Outside of that, they worked for every single thing. There were no coverage busts, right? They worked for everything that they got. You forced them to have to snap it again a bunch of times to see if they could stay out of their own way. And that's how you draw it up. Like, make a bad team snap it again, because bad teams do bad things. So if you make them snap it again, you're hoping this is the play they get a holding penalty. This is the one where it gets batted in the air and picked off. This is the one where, their tackle gets beat and Jones doesn't see him and you get a sack for his fumble, right? something bad is going to happen. Daniel Jones doesn't see a defender, makes a poor read, throws it up for grabs. It gets picked off. Make them snap it again. And we did that in this game. Communication was great. There were no coverage busts. Guys weren't running wide open for the most part. We made them earn it. And they didn't have a bunch of big plays in this game. So we get a check mark there as well. So when it's all said and done on the offensive side, we got 3 points there. And on the defensive side, we have 2 for a combining of 5 points. Again, generally, you're not going to win a bunch of games with 5. If you win, you barely win. We barely won. But we won, right? You'd like to see us somewhere in that 6 to 8 neighborhood, right? 5.5 at the bare minimum. But, this is the difference between this year and years past. When I would do this, if we would end up with a 5 or less, we would probably have lost the game. Now we're getting 5s. This is like the second or third time we've had a 5 this year, and we won. And I said this on the day after Giants reaction video earlier. This is the difference between past years and this year is we're finding ways to win, and that's what good teams do. They don't make excuses. They don't find ways to bungle games away and give them away. They find ways to win. That's the mark of a good team. It's hard winning in this league. It's hard playing mistake-free football. It's hard executing when your best is required, and that's what this team does. It wasn't pretty for all 60 minutes, but when the best was required of this team, right before the half, we went out and we got a touchdown. When the best was required of this team at the end of the game, with the game on the line, knowing that we couldn't give the ball back to the Giants, we march it down the field, we pick up first down after first down, and we put this game away on offense. That's what the good teams do. When your best is required, you offer up your best. And that's what the good teams do. They find a way to win. And that's what we've done this season, hence the 7-2 start to the season. So really, really enjoying this journey, really enjoying this season. I'm having a ton of fun, as probably most of you are as well. And we're starting to have some guys step up. It's fun to watch. Jeremy Chen, huge yesterday. You know what I also thought about having watched this game back again? And I think I was thinking this as I was watching it live, and I meant to bring it up to you guys yesterday. And I even meant to bring it up on the day after reaction, and I forgot. But I want to say it here. Noah Brown is becoming one of Jaden Daniels' favorite targets. Like, so many of you want to add another receiver, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to add more talent to this team. I get it. But he's perfectly comfortable with Noah Brown as his number 2 option. And I still contend that we don't get it to Luke McCaffrey enough. Luke was open on the opening possession of the game, and Jaden just didn't see him, right? Up the sideline. He's wide open, right? For whatever reason, he's not looking for 12, okay? But he throws the football with such confidence to Noah Brown. In some tight spots, Noah comes down with it. Noah bounced back from a rough showing in Week 8 versus the Bears. Obviously, he had the Hail Mary, the walk-off catch, the Noah's Ark, if you will. But he had a rough go of it last week against the Bears. And that was the first time he didn't have his best showing, because he's been outstanding for us. And he was outstanding again yesterday. 5 catches I think he had yesterday. A lot of them, tightly contested and, in traffic, difficult catches. One of the throws was ridiculous from Jaden, back, kind of back shoulder-ish away from the defender. And Noah plucks it out of the air as he's falling down, and just great connection between the two. But you know what else is really interesting to note, and I don't know if a lot of people are bringing this up? When he decides to go deep to try to draw like a pass interference, who's he throwing the ball to? He's throwing it to Noah Brown. He forced the pass interference against the Cardinals, right? An easy layup for a touchdown after that pass interference, right? Like, we almost said, look, that ball wasn't even catchable, but we'll take it. He did it again in the Ravens game when we had to have it. It was a 4th down, and the game's over if we don't convert this. And he throws it up to Noah Brown in one-on-one, and Noah, he has this knack for drawing pass interference penalties, going up for the football. We've had receivers here in the past that don't understand the concept of jumping back into a defender who's not looking, fighting to try to come back to the ball feverishly to make it look way worse than it might be so that you can get that penalty drawn. He has that down to a science, and he did it against the Ravens in a situation where we had to have it. You look at this game. He drew another pass interference penalty that put the football right at the goal line, and Eckler paid it off with a touchdown run. He has been excellent at drawing pass interference penalties, not only catching the football, but also giving us big plays in the pass game without even making a catch. There's a connection between those two, and Jaden is very comfortable forcing it to Noah Brown, and usually the results are very positive. So wanted to bring that up as well. But let's continue on and go in other news where we heard from DQ on his victory / Tell the Truth Monday presser. We'll talk about what was said there. But before we do that, I'm going to take a look at the snaps from week 9, as we usually do here on Mondays, and got some things to talk about when we look at these snaps. So let's do that now. We start with the offensive snaps, and 62, as you can see, in total for the offensive snaps. And for the first time this season, all 5 offensive linemen played all 100% of the snaps. And not because we've had guys in and out of the lineup, knock on a little bit of wood, but because we've had the swinging rotation at left tackle, and so it was never going to be 100% of the snaps at left tackle until on Sunday against the Giants. Brandon Coleman, with no Cornelius Lucas, Coleman was able to play 100% of the snaps, and this could be opening the door for Coleman to just be the starting left tackle from here on out, right? Even when Lucas is healthy now, they may just go with Coleman as the left tackle. My guess is Coleman will be starting at left tackle, playing the entire game against the Steelers. And I would guess that, Cole Luke might be ready to come back for the Thursday night game against the Eagles, but I think they might just stick with BC at this point, right? We'll see what happens. But it's good to see all 5, including, Tyler Biadasz, who's dealing with the hand, Nick Allegretti, who's dealing with the ankle. Coleman had his finger pop out of place, and Allegretti had to pop it back in. It's good to see these guys fight through all of the things they got going on and still manage to play the entire game, along with Jaden Daniels at the quarterback position. Terry McLaurin, as he customarily does, led all skill position players in amount of snaps on the field with 46, which amounts to 74% of the snaps. John Bates, this was a big game in terms of running the football, protecting. You had a rookie left tackle out there in his first, real action in terms of start to finish. So I'm guessing Bates was out there chipping and helping out a ton. But we ran it a lot in this game too, right? We only had 22 pass attempts, I believe, in this game, 22, 25, something like that for Jaden Daniels. And so a lot of Bates today or yesterday. Noah Brown, 31 snaps, good for 50%. Zach Ertz, he was really quiet yesterday. He had 1 catch on a 3rd down where he was not able to get the 1st down, but he set up a 4th down and very manageable that we were able to convert. Very quiet game for Zach Ertz. I'm used to him being a little bit more involved, but that's to show you how many guys we have, right? That Ertz can pretty much go, unnoticed in the game. Last week was his biggest output of the season against the Bears. I think he had like 6 or 7 catches, led the team in receiving yards. Well, he was behind Terry in receiving yards. Terry had 125. I think he led the team in catches, though, with 7, and I think he had 70, some odd yards last week, did Zach Ertz, but only 1 catch this game. Very quiet, so he might be due for a big game against the Steelers next week. Eckler, 29 snaps. De'Ami Brown, 26. Big catch and run on a 3rd down before the half to set up the second Terry touchdown DQ talked about that in his presser today as well. I talked about it yesterday. I'm a De'Ami Brown fan, so I always try to talk about the things that he does really well because he's another one of these guys. And I talked about this on the day after the show. We got a lot of selfless guys on this team, and De'Ami Brown's one of them. Jeremy McNichols is another one as well. 24 snaps for him. Same could be said for Ben Sinnott. And I found out that Olamide is not how he pronounces his name. It's Olamide Zacchaeus. All right, so when you know better, do better. So it's Olamide Zacchaeus. I thought it was Olamide. That's what people have been calling him for a very long time, but it's Olamide Zacchaeus. So till literally they called him that on the show. He did not correct anyone. I'm assuming that they asked him how to say his name. They're not going to say his name incorrectly, right? So Olamide it is. 24 snaps for him as well. Luke McCaffrey, 23 snaps. Chris Rodriguez, a very impactful 20 snaps. I talked about the big block he had on the 3rd and 1 where he picked up Brian Burns right in the hole and gave Jaden the extra time he needed to get the ball to Ben Sinnott on that 3rd and 1. He had the big 11 carries on the final 2 possessions of the game, including the last possession of the game where he carried the load and pretty much brought us home, right? Big game for Chris Rodriguez. C-Rod stepped up when his number was called and had a very impactful 20 snaps in this game. And then Trent Sclapp, 1 snap for him. And thank you, Jesus. He finally didn't come in and make a mistake. Every time he comes in the game, I'm like, what are you going to do this time? Are you going to false start? Are you going to line up, off the ball when you're supposed to be on the ball? What are you going to do this time, right? How are you going to mess us up? How are you going to make us go backwards? He came in for his 1 play. It was on a 4th down and 1, and he didn't screw up. Good for you, Trent. Thank you. So now let's get to the defensive snaps. And as you can see, 65 was the total amount of snaps defensively. For the defense, Jeremy Chen, Bobby Wagner, and Frankie Louvu played on all 65 of the snaps. Quan Martin, Benjamin St. Juste played all but 1 snap at 64 snaps. Mike Samer still played in all but 3 snaps for 95% at 62 snaps. Noah Igbenogany played in 54 snaps. So you see what it is at the cornerback position, right? As a matter of fact, there's a name missing from this list. Can you guess who it is? You guessed it. Emmanuel Forbes Jr. did not play in this game. Noah Igbenogany played 54 snaps. Benjamin St. Juste played 64, and Mike Samer still played 62. So, and look, that's the group right there. As much as y'all don't love Juice, that's the group right there. That's the group that gives us the best chance every Sunday. So, Payne played 44 snaps. Dorrance Armstrong played 43 snaps. Johnny Newton also played 43. That's the core of our defensive line as well. Payne, Armstrong, and Newton moving forward. Cleveland Farrell played 31 snaps. Same with Dante Fowler Jr. Fowler was super impactful in his 31 snaps. Once again, he leads our team in sacks now after notching 2 more sacks, including another turnover-inducing play where he forced the fumble of Daniel Jones on the 2nd possession of the game, led to our first points of the game. Percy Butler and Fedarian Mathis each played 20 snaps. Mathis left the game a little bit prematurely with a head injury, but he was cleared from the concussion protocol and able to come back in if need be. Sheldon Day played 17 snaps. Jalen Holmes played 14. F.A. Obata played 10 snaps. And Michael Walker played 3. Again, another name not here, Jordan McGee, who actually had a really good tackle on special teams in this game. But again, they got to trust him to put him out there on the field in a defensive capacity. And he's way behind the 8 ball there. So they're going to continue to trust Michael Walker before they put Jordan McGee on the field. So really interesting to see how things are shaping up. And, a lot of us want them to do something on the defensive line. go out and get an edge rusher. But don't forget, Javonte John Baptiste is about to return from IR here shortly. They're getting healthier on the defensive line. You got Clee back. You got Dorrance Armstrong back. FA's back. And now you're going to get Javonte back here shortly. So I think they're going to stand pat on the defensive line as long as, there are no more injuries to the defensive tackle position. I think corner is where they really want to, bolster this team. And if something gets done, my guess is it's going to either be corner or defensive end. That's what I've been saying the entire time. But I think it's more so going to be corner. If something gets done, I think it's going to be the cornerback position. So speaking of corners and, what they may or may not do, DQ stepped to the podium today. I was disappointed in the media because no one asked him. And this is what happens when you're winning too. When you're winning, people don't like to harp on the negative stuff. When you're losing, you start to really dig into the minutia of the game, and you start finding little small things that didn't go well, and you harp on the small granular details. When you're winning, that shit gets swept under the rug, right? I just hope behind closed doors they're not doing that. They don't strike me as a group that does it in that manner. But I needed some culpability for the no challenge of the fourth down play, and nobody brought it up in the media. And DQ didn't bring it up himself. Like that's a tell the truth Monday situation. Like, hey, I effed up. If we telling the truth, I effed up. I should have threw the challenge flag. Nobody brought it up. And he didn't bring it up. And I don't like that, right? But at the end of the day, DQ talked about a number of topics. He talked about the Brotherhood. We all saw the video of him getting hype in the locker room and the players getting hype. And, I listened to Terry after the game with Mike Garafolo. I listened to various interviews of players, De'Ami Brown and Nick Allegretti and Jaden Daniels and, a slew of other guys speak after the game, and the message remains the same. These guys are playing for one another. OZ talked about the Brotherhood and how, it's just different, when you're selfless and you're playing for something bigger than yourself. And that's what Terry said. And, DQ talked about that. He talked about beating the Giants for a second time and how they knew this was going to be a tough game and how they knew they had to make plays in those winning moments. And he talks about those winning moments all the time. And he pointed out two in particular. He talked about the 2-minute drive before the half. And I told you, we've been spectacular in 2-minute drives before the half. I can't think of a situation this season where we've had the ball in a 2-minute situation and didn't score when we tried to score, right? I mean, going all the way back to, I think, week 2 against the Giants the first time, I think we might have gotten a field goal before the half there. I'm not sure if we did or not. But every game that we've had the football with a chance to score before the half, we've done it for the most part. The Ravens game, I know we missed a field goal before the half, but we got in the scoring range there, right? Panthers game, with Marcus Mariota in the game, we went all the way down to feel like 91 yards and scored a touchdown. Did it here against the Giants. Went all the way down the field, scored a touchdown after the defense got one of its few stops of the game, right? I think we got a field goal before the Bears game, if I'm not mistaken. A field goal before the half against the Bears. We've been pretty proficient in scoring right before the half. That's been one of the things that's been really impressive. And DQ talked about it before the season started, about how important, certain situations are. My big thing was situational football. We've been awful. As far back as I can remember, you probably got to go back to the Shanahans, the last time we were situationally responsible as an organization. You got to go back to the Shanahans. We have not been situationally responsible since, till now. And he talked about the 4-minute offense at the end of the game. Huge. We couldn't afford. It's the same thing we did against Cincinnati. We could not afford to give the ball back to the Giants with a chance to tie or win the game. Not with the way the defense was playing. You already knew what the outcome was going to be. And we just watched Baltimore defensively not be able to get a stop against Cleveland the week before, a one-win team, and lose on the road against a team they have no business losing to. That's the NFL. That's what family business is all about. So if you thought the Giants were going to lie down and we were going to blow them out, you had another thing coming, because the Giants always play us tough. And if we would have went 3 and out after the Giants had just scored the touchdown and cut this to a 5-point, deficit, we would have lost this game. We would have lost this game. Instead, 2nd and 8 or 9 or whatever it was, we go play action, half boot, throw back to OZ, and that put us in a position of pretty much put this thing on ice. And then C-Rod took over from there. Face mask, gave us another first down, and then he took those 3 carries, picked up the first down on the 3rd one, and allowed us to salt this game away. And that's how the good teams do it. Giants don't ever see the football again, and we go home winners in the best formation that exists in this game, the victory formation. So DQ talked about the execution in those 2 spots, and he said we came a long way from week 2 to week 9, and he's right, obviously. He talked about Jeremy Chen and his evolution in this defense, and he said, I said this earlier, that was Jeremy Chen's best game by far, and DQ literally echoed those sentiments and said that was his best game as a commander. And it's not close. He led the team in tackles with 12. He had 2 tackles for loss. He was flying around. He had the pass breakup. He had the first possession of the game. Remember, Giants run a bootleg on a 3rd and 3, and Daniel Jones drops it off to the tight end, and who's right there to meet him and greet him and decleat him? You betcha. You guessed it. Jeremy Chen, right? He was everywhere. So he talked about his growth and development. He talked about, Forbes not playing. He's like, look, it just happened to be that way this game. There was nothing, specific to it. It was more about the Giants and how they, deployed their guys. A lot of, run formations, a lot of heavy looks. So they were really comfortable with the 3 guys they had on the field. And this was a game you had to be able to strap up and tackle. Giants weren't going to come in here trying to, be finesse. You had to be able to tackle. This wasn't an Emmanuel Forbes game. We need dudes in there that's willing to throw their bodies around. We don't need no Olays in this game. So I think that's part of the reason he didn't play this past week, because some of those tackle attempts last week, trash. And if you can't tackle, they've already shown us, if you can't tackle, you can't play. They won't stand for it. They asked DQ about the trade deadline, and he's like, look, I was talking all this shit on the day after, show, and I still said, a Max Crosby might be a bit of a head case. Literally, what's his name? I forgot my man's name. He literally asked the question that I was kind of hinting at and referring to on my, post game, my day after reaction show, where I said, you got to be careful about intermingling, new guys in the locker room, because we built this ecosystem. This shit is perfect. You don't want to tamper with it. I said, guys like Max Crosby, head cases, and then 2 seconds later I was like, but I'd still take him in a heartbeat. You don't turn down opportunities to acquire dogs, right? You figure out a way to get them to acquiesce and adjust to what you've built, right? That's what the Patriots used to do. They never turned down guys that were excellent players, because we're gonna make them conform to the Patriot way, right? We'll take a Corey Dillon, a Junior Seau, not that Junior Seau was a head case or anything, more a trouble guy off the field, but you take a Rodney Harrison, you take a Randy Moss, guys that were cast-offs elsewhere, Chad Ocho, say you bring them in and you say, nah, we gonna make them work. Because this is New England. This is what we do. Our culture supersedes anything that goes on outside of this building. So I'm open to bringing in anybody that's talented. And DQ pretty much said the same thing. He's like, it's all about competition. Yeah, we got to make sure that the guys that we consider bringing in here, if we do something, fit our culture. But it's all about competition. Translation: hey, if the dude's a dog, we'll figure it out. Don't worry about that, right? So he talked about that as well. He talked about the run game. He really minimized the Giants' run game. Like, he really made it seem like, oh, Daniel Jones got out on us a couple of times, and that was it. Like, nah, bro. They had whole entire possessions where they rammed it down our esophagus, like in the first half. Now, again, I knew they'd be better in the second half, and they were. But some of that too was the Giants got away from the run and started to throw it more because they were down 2 scores. And running the football shortens the game. You can do that in the first half when the game's close and, you got a shot. It was 7-7. You can shorten the game. You can play that game when it's 7-7. Hell, even when it's 14-7, you can play that game. Once it became 21-7, all right, now we already know it's tough on it's tough on us to score if you're the Giants. We can't be shortening the game. We got to start throwing the football. And that's what they did in the second half. So he just made it seem like, yeah, Daniel Jones got out on us a couple of times. We just got to clean that up. I'm like, you do realize that they ran for 140 yards and Daniel Jones didn't run for 70 of them by himself? You do know that they gutted us in the first half, right? But I think he was less concerned about it. And I wasn't as concerned as some of you were, but I did acknowledge, like, yo, y'all got to tighten this shit up. This is ridiculous. So he talked about getting healthier on the defensive line, which I just brought up. Everybody's back except for Javonte, and he'll be back here shortly. I don't remember when he got put on IR. I want to say it was the Ravens game that he got injured in. That was week 6. So he'll probably be back more likely than not, I think, available to come back off of IR probably next week. Again, the window opens up, and then they can start that process of slowly integrating him and working him back in. But that's another reason I don't see them doing anything at defensive end, is because we got a slew of defensive linemen. I think if they do something, it's going to be corner. That's it. I don't see any other position that they aggressively go after in the trade market. I think it's corner, and that's it. You know what I did too? So that was pretty much what DQ had to say. I accidentally, so I watched the DQ presser, and I had it playing in the background as I was setting up, and the next video just played, and it happened to be the calls to each of the draft picks. And that, I encourage you to go back and watch that video now, because it hits different now that you see the way this team has come together and the contributions of these players. It hits a little bit different now. That shit moved me a little bit, man. I ain't even gonna front. That shit moved me, listening to those calls, seeing the way that those guys were embraced by DQ and Chef P, and then seeing how those guys have come in and given us everything that they've got and helped us get to this point. It hits a little different. And I watched the Mikey Samer still, the Frozone mic'd up. And that was some good stuff too. And I'll tell you this much as well. Jason Simmons isn't getting enough credit for, and Joe Witt at every opportunity brings up Jason Simmons' name. When we talk about this staff, and we talk about this all-star cast of coaches that we've assembled, Jason Simmons should be among those guys at the top of the list, at the top of the pile when we talk about impacts. Yeah, you want to talk about this secondary and this, that, and the third, and Juice isn't this, and the secondary isn't that. Let's talk about the improvement that this secondary has made. Whether it's Quan Martin, Percy Butler, Jeremy Chen, and it's Olamide now, right? But Mike Samer still playing a position he's never played before, which is boundary corner. Noah Igbenogany playing the way he's playing. You got to give Jason Simmons some credit. A lot of it. And just seeing his impact, listening to the mic'd up and all these different coaches, but Jason Simmons in particular, talking to these guys. His impact is major, man. It's a major impact. Anyway, I digress. If you haven't watched the Frozone mic'd up, do yourself a favor. It's 12 minutes of Commanders gold. Enjoy that. But anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on this installment of Commanders Nightly News. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys next time. Tomorrow, obviously, is Election Day, so there'll be a lot of stuff going on, but we're still going to keep it business as usual here on the Louie T Network. So we'll have, the kickback session. We'll have the film session. I can't wait to watch, specifically Brandon Coleman, among other things. And we're still going to do the things that we normally do on this channel. So hopefully you'll be present for most of that. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. Celebrate! We 7-2. Swept the Giants. Still atop this division. And riding high. You can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing. Oh.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap. Hand to Riggins. Good hole.